Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 4th, 2026 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. I am Commissioner Nia Bagley, Chair. Tonight we will discuss and make motions to the following items. The first item is an overview of the risk assessment and management plan for Arlington County. Next, a site plan amendment to allow temporary conversion of residential units to hotel units. And finally, an adaptive reuse site plan amendment for the conversion of 2 office buildings to residential. A few pointers before we get started for the participants. Presenters and speakers joining the meeting through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and other electronic devices muted until you are called upon by the clerk. Please turn off the sound to any devices around you to minimize interference and keep your cameras off until the clerk announces your name to speak. When called upon, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is in the meeting command bar at the top of the screen. Neither the moderator nor the clerk have the ability to unmute your mic. Once you have spoken, please mute your mics and turn your cameras off. If you are dialing in by phone to join the meeting, press *6 to unmute. Public speakers will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration with email confirmation is required to speak at tonight's hearing. We are not able to accommodate additional speakers. All speakers, virtual and hybrid, will receive 2 minutes to comment as an individual. Only representatives of a county board appointed advisory group, commission, and/or committee and/or a commission will receive 3 minutes to comment. A timer will be displayed on the screen if speaking virtually, and speakers in person will follow the timer stationed on the podium. Audio of tonight's meeting is available by phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity, please reconnect by phone. However, if you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible 30-second warning to wrap up your comments. You will be muted when your time has expired. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who need technical assistance only. Please do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for further information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Tonight's meeting will be available for review through the YouTube platform. A link has been provided on the Planning Commission website 24 to 48 hours after the adjournment of the meeting. Although the meetings will no longer be a live broadcast, the meetings will be available for review with closed captioning on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1073 and Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, 24 to 48 hours after the adjournment of the meeting. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website via a link to YouTube as stated. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Madam Clerk, please call the first agenda item.
Thank you. Our first item is an overview of the risk assessment and management plan and how it is helping inform flood resilient design in Arlington. We have DES staff Eileen Winquest and Jason Papacosma to present this item to us this evening. This is an informational item.
Great, thank you. Thanks for inviting us here. And we have a short presentation and then we're happy to take questions as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the risk assessment management plan and how it's helping Arlington be more flood resilient as we move forward. So sorry, there we go. Oops. Jump to the next slide here. Sorry. So just to talk a little bit about some of Arlington's kind of flood risk challenges, what we're dealing with currently. As we all know, some areas of the county have experienced repetitive and severe life-threatening flooding. And some of these areas, the reason they have a higher risk of flooding is they are located in areas that were former stream valleys. So during the history of Arlington's early development, about 60% of our natural stream network was buried underground in storm sewers. And at the time, the stormwater management requirements at that time obviously were not the same as what we have kind of more modern standards today. So the stormwater pipe capacity at that time, was not accounting for future development and obviously not for climate change. This was, nearly 100 years ago. And also the design did not include what is known as overland relief, which is something that is planned for in current engineering design, and that's a safe pathway for water to flow, if the system reaches capacity during a flash flood event. So again, some of these areas are former stream valleys. They have this higher risk of flooding, and this is really kind of a key focus of the ramp. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. So. But with our overall stormwater management program, following several severe storm events that we had in 2018 and 2019, the county really tried to pivot our stormwater program to have more of a resilience focus. And there was an interdepartmental working group that was formed and had a series of recommendations, and several of those you see reflected here on the slide. And they made these recommendations for strategies to reduce flood risk in Arlington. And the ramp is one of those key kind of recommendations that falls under the analytics and data assessment category that you see here. But there were also other areas as well that were focused, for improvement. So the ramp is really overall is a framework for better modeling, measuring, and understanding our risk in the face of increasing frequency and intensity of storms. So some of the key aspects of the ramp that are really important, for our future planning are these climate projections. So not just understanding our current risk today, but what would be our risk in 2040 and 2070 with these changing storm patterns. And then also new inundation maps, which highlight some of these areas that are outside of FEMA floodplains, but that also have areas of flood risk. And then a really key part of the ramp also was risk assessments. So understanding what our cost implications are, what our current risk is. So we understand that today, if we do nothing, this is potential risk that we might, be affected by from flooding. And so we can understand that when we're looking at flood mitigation and the cost of potential flood mitigation projects. So you have a better way to compare those and understand those. So that's just a little overview with the ramp. So again, just trying to clarify, I think everyone is probably very familiar with FEMA floodplains. Those are, again, flood hazard maps that are published by the agency, the FEMA, and those are flood insurance rate maps. You might hear from as well, and they basically include these areas called special flood hazard areas. And those generally are also known as a 100-year floodplain, a 1% chance of flooding in any given year, or it's also known as a 100-year floodplain. So those 100-year floodplains are federally regulated, and structures that are in the floodplain must have flood insurance if they have a federally backed mortgage. So everyone is pretty familiar with FEMA floodplains, but one of the challenges, that we've seen in Arlington and also across the country is that actually a lot of flooding is happening outside of these FEMA floodplains. So 40% of flood damage claims are happening in other areas beyond the FEMA floodplains. So, the key there is that the FEMA floodplains are not really capturing all the high risk areas. So that was one of the focuses with the ramp, and the inundation mapping that we have in the ramp, is trying to better explain and highlight these other locations where we have also have flood risk. So for example, you can see on the map here, this shows, some parts of Arlington where we have the ramp inundation areas. Again, those are not regulated as FEMA floodplains, but they are areas where the ramp identified through modeling that there is some elevated flood risk. And again, you can kind of see those are some of the former stream valleys. So again, the risk is related to those being lower topography areas, lower elevation, even if the stream is no longer, remaining there. And then you can see in the dark blue and the light blue, those are official FEMA floodplains. So again, this is just kind of explaining the difference here and the importance of the ramp in terms of highlighting these inundation areas and kind of giving us that additional information. So. Oh, let me see. I think, oops, I don't know if this has an animation on here. So anyway, sorry, this slide is not showing up all the way there, but basically the ramp included information on multiple climate change threats. So in addition, rainfall and storms, increasing frequency of storms and intensity, but also looking at sea level rise and storm surge. So if you had a combination of a very intense storm, while you are having a hurricane or something, you might be having storm surge coming, and you could have a combination of factors with that. So just to provide some more information, how are we using the ramp? The ramp was completed in 2024. So these are some of the examples of the ways that staff have been, kind of using and applying the information. Obviously, I know you all have seen some of it in the recent plan reviews. So that is something, with public and private projects, we are using it to communicate more to the public so people can have more information. That's one of our key aspects is for people to better understand their flood risk, and then, they can make choices in terms of flood insurance or flood proofing or other things to best protect themselves. Resiliency planning and measurement. And then also, we'll talk a little bit as well about providing guidance for our county projects as we move into the CIP. And again, some of that relates to, looking at the potential cost from our existing flood risk, and then that is helpful to compare to future projects so you can see the cost benefit. Another important sort of follow-on project that came out of the ramp is some flood adaptation, design, and construction guidelines. So we've been working on those over the past year, and we're in the process of completing those. And so we'll be sharing some more information about those as well. And so those are really important. Again, they have kind of a combination, a new type of flood adaptation map that really tries to combine the FEMA floodplains and the ramp inundation maps and provide more information about these higher risk locations. But it also has a lot of great strategies for designers and construction providers to be able to design their projects in a more resilient way. So that will be we'll be sharing that very soon. So, and as we talked about, the ramp is very helpful looking at the value of our current investments, the cost of inaction, and confirmation of some of our previous analyses. And then it also did include some other policy and programmatic measures. And then one other thing too is, more agencies and even some of the bond rating agencies are looking for this types of resilience planning information for local governments and other organizations. So if you're applying for grants and other things, having this type of study done is very helpful for that as well. So just a few other slides kind of giving some examples of some of the information from the ramp. So you can see on this slide here, this is an example of one of the inundation maps in the ramp. So it's got on the left side a 10-year storm, with baseline conditions. And then on the right side is looking at a 500-year storm in 2070. So again, it's not only looking at our current situation for flood modeling, but projecting forward with potential climate change impacts to storms and what we might see as a result of that. So there's this type of mapping available for quite a few areas of the county in the ramp study. And so then obviously that can be very helpful with our capital project planning. So it helps, us to identify areas and properties that are at a higher risk from flooding. And again, they may be outside of the FEMA floodplains. And then we can also look at part of the ramp also identified, and I'll just jump ahead to the next slide here to kind of illustrate this. In the ramp, they were also able to look at, so once you have the current information, and modeling and flooding, you can look at when we do certain number of projects, what type of reduction in flooding are we seeing from those specific projects. So in all the watersheds that were studied in the ramp, there were a number of projects that were scoped, and we are able to estimate reduction in flooded area in terms of acreage and percentage and things like that. So it's very, quantitative that way in terms of being able to evaluate and compare projects. So, as we talked about earlier with some of the watersheds where we're dealing with the the severe flooding, there can be a real challenge with space. And I know everybody probably, deals with that with a lot of projects in the county. There's just, a lot of need, for the space in the county. And there can be a challenge, trying to find room to make some of these stormwater improvements. So again, with our capital project, we do have a relatively new voluntary property acquisition program, and that can often be one of the most cost-effective ways, in terms of finding more space, to be able to make the stormwater upgrades that we are doing. And it also does help to remove some of these vulnerable properties, from the more risky locations. So, and then again, as the Planning Commission has seen, we are using the information as well during development plan review. So all the projects are reviewed, relative to the ramp inundation maps. And staff are providing that information to developers as well for their consideration, to look at the design. Is there ways to reduce flood risk and improve the resiliency for the particular project? Now, again, this is not a regulatory requirement like with a FEMA floodplain, but it's just, again, providing, that additional information and resources and in a lot of cases, it seems, would be in the interest of the builders and the property owners, to take that into consideration. So, but there is a key emphasis on not shifting flood impacts, to adjacent properties as well. So, and as I mentioned, the ramp, in addition to all the modeling and mapping, there were also some other programmatic and policy recommendations, which you can see here. And I won't go through all of these in detail, but many of these the county has, undertaken and is working towards, better communications through, between agencies. One key area we've been focusing a lot on is having a better rainfall monitoring network, rain gauges and flow gauges, and that's something the county has been building. And then this also, you can see on here, the voluntary property acquisition. So there's a number of these policy recommendations have been moving forward. So as I did mention, the flood adaptation design guidelines, these have been under development, and we will be finishing them up soon and be sharing some more information about those. So they provide more information about these flood risk areas, and they have a lot of different voluntary strategies that builders and designers can take into account in terms of how you how you design your building and things you can do. So it will be useful, the residential, but also commercial and other levels as well. So we'll be sharing those shortly. And then we also just wanted to highlight as well that all the ramp mapping information is available on the county website. And so I have the link there. And so you can go on there and you can look at the different climate scenarios and different layers. You can kind of turn those on and off and see all that information there. So. Okay, I think that was all we had for the slides, so I will pause there and see if there are any questions. We can go back if anyone wants to.
Ms. Winquist, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and I want to thank Mr. Pfeiffer for working with us to coordinate this. This is a really important topic, and we hear about it all the time on all the projects, and some of us are not as skilled in it or experienced in it as others. The reason this came up this way was as we were doing the Walgreens site, which ramp was used there.
Mm-hmm.
And the one commissioner that we have who I think knows a lot about this, Commissioner Robertson, mentioned that, oh my gosh, that's just not enough. And so following up on that comment, we thought it would be appropriate for everybody's purposes to hear this. So thank you. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Any questions? Okay, so let's go with Commissioner Streiner, then Commissioner Lantelmi, then Commissioner Robertson.
Okay, well, yeah. What Commissioner Bagley said, this is very educational, so I always love those. So you mentioned the piece about the sort of regulatory authority. Is there any appetite for that from staff, or do you think the sort of personal self-interest of preserving, homeowners preserving their and landowners preserving their property is enough for this, and that the primary focus should be educational and informing policy decisions made here? Or is there a push for regulatory authority here as well?
I think if you want to jump in. on
Yeah,
that.
I'll jump in on that. Yeah, that is the sort of the next question. I think the way we're looking at this is a starting point. A lot of localities are doing what we just described. How do we fill in the gaps that the regulatory FEMA maps don't cover? So this is where we start. I think there's a lot of considerations. If you take it regulatory, looking more closely at what authority do we have, what does that mean for properties and their ability to develop and all those things. So I think one way I look at it is we're a lot farther along than we were 5 years ago in this space. We really weren't, we had nothing. And 5 years from now, I would think this would be more advanced then, as these considerations become more and more important. So I think it may be where it's headed, but there's a lot to consider before we get there.
Yeah, and I think where it is now is great too, because if I'm a landowner and I can see that my property is in a very vulnerable area, I'm going to be very self-interested in preserving that. So this information is helpful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to hear Commissioner Robertson's comments before I say anything.
Go ahead, Commissioner Robertson.
Thank you. I think you guys have done an absolutely spectacular job on this. I'm so impressed with the thought and the effort and the commitment to take seriously something that a lot of communities don't take as seriously as they should. My question, which I will warn you ahead of time, doesn't have a good answer, is how would you describe your level of confidence that the horizon modeling and your IDF curves and your blended engineering approach and the other actions that you've taken, the terrific actions that you've taken, will be sufficient to a climate future that is wildly uncertain?
Sure, that's a good question. I'll jump in and then, yeah, Jason, I'm sure you'll have more to add. So I know they did have a couple different scenarios they were looking at with the, kind of potential climate change. So, with the IDF curves, which, for everybody's awareness, if you haven't heard that, those are basically just, planning information that the engineers use to kind of like figure out how large to design the stormwater based on, what rainfall they expect, for different storms. So, so we did have two different scenarios that we included in the ramp. So I think that was one way to try to get at, sort of a more optimistic and then, maybe a little bit more, not as rosy of a scenario. So, so I think that was, generally the approach we took with that. So,
Well, I'll just beat this horse that's already dead. Your not rosy scenario isn't not rosy enough.
Okay, sure.
We did. I worked at EPA during the Clinton administration, which was in a different geologic age. So we tried doing similar things. And we failed almost miserably to predict with any accuracy what we faced. And I think a degree of humility about that will help us make this a better program. So all I'd suggest is something like, an X factor that you add to these things to try to take cognizance of it. When we were dealing with the reauthorization of the Safe Drinking Water Act, there was a 10X safety factor applied to help protect the health of children. Was there any degree of certainty that 10X would be enough? No, but we wanted to add something that took cognizance of the fact that kids ingest more water and pollutants in terms of their body weight than adults do. And some thinking about things like that might be used in this kind of situation, I think helps us. We're never going to be able to avoid all of the problems that we face from an uncertain climate future, but it allows us to gain a little bit on them. I thank Commissioner Lantelmi for the deference and yield to him.
Thank you.
And moving from Commissioner Robertson's looking way out the road, I want to look closer to now. Up on the screen, of course, is Spout Run, which was the big topic of last meeting. what sort of coordination is there now, and what sort of putting things in the capital plan is there now? We know this is a problem area. We now have a plan for at least one block of this, but the new pipe there isn't going to connect up with anything, so it sort of isn't going to be able to be used. Yet we're already getting flooding now. It's going to require a great deal of county participation, and for that matter, VDOT participation, in order to make anything happen along that area there, because it isn't just that one site, it's that whole area. And of course, that drains a huge amount of Arlington further upstream, where we've done a little bit of overland relief, for one project, but not much more. What sort of coordination is there? What sort of getting things done now is happening in response to what you're clearly highlighting as major problems? And it's not just this one site, there's a few others, but this is like jumps out almost as like one of the most in need, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I'll pass that to Jason, I think.
Yeah, and it's a good question. I will start by saying it's even more challenging, I think, than you mentioned. Not that you don't know this, but those pipes, one of them's under a private, the pawn shop, one of them goes under the shopping center, right? So it's even more, plus VDOT. So in a way, that's in a nutshell, this is kind of, I'd say to use the word good loosely here, a good example of the challenges of a stormwater program, these legacy land use and drainage decisions that were made, as Eileen described, decades ago, without really thinking about like what was coming or how water wins in the end. So, but to your question, we've started, because we're in the middle of our capital planning process. The next 10-year CIP will be proposed in June, and then for consideration July. So we're having some conversations with our transportation folks about planning for that area, because there's transportation needs there, as you know, and there's stormwater needs. And so how do we put that all together? And then we're going to have to engage other parties. That's what makes it extra challenging, because it's not just within our right of way to plan and implement. It has these other parties. So we're looking at it for sure. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's a high priority to figure out like when can we do that and what's it going to take.
The fear is that we are 2026 now, and we wouldn't be able to get anything until 2036, 2040 to really address it. And that's way too far off. Thank you.
Commissioner Torres.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm very happy to see it, and I really did love all your slides and the information. I think it's something that all of us and the public needs to be more aware of. I remember a project that recently got approved, I think it was by 66, I'm sorry, I can't recall the name. And one of my questions that I asked during this SPRC was if the building essentially becomes an island, if worst case scenario. And I didn't expand on that, but in my head, I knew why I asked that question. And it's because, gosh, it's really loud. We are not really planning for worst case scenario in a building completely cut off from ER, police, help. Similar to what happened in Puerto Rico, where San Juan was completely cut off for about a week or two, and people didn't even have access to water. So I'm wondering if there's any way within RAMP to expand on that and start wondering if there are going to be buildings and houses within these spaces that potentially can become islands, in quotations. How would they respond in a worst case scenario?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the advantages of the modeling and the mapping and the RAMP is that it really, helps to highlight these areas. And so it's not just in DES or CPHD, but all of our departments. And part of it, I didn't necessarily focus on it tonight, but a part of the RAMP was looking at critical facilities around the county and identifying, for our public facilities, where are ones that are at higher risk. So countywide, we can be making making, changes or adjustments to those properties. But, this information, can be used, with our emergency management, departments and divisions and, for planning. And so we do coordinate with, with DIPSM and on all the kind of hazard management and those types of plans as well. So I think that's, really a key here is just kind of, elevating, this information and kind of highlighting these areas that are more vulnerable so everyone can start to understand. And, whether it's transportation or emergency response or, however you're what you're looking at, what kind of adjustments we need to make. But that's a very good point as well. So.
Any other questions or comments? Awesome. Ms. Lundquist and staff, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know how busy you are. And again, to Mr. Pfeiffer for the coordination. And again, over here to Commissioner Robertson, who kind of came up with this question at the beginning so that Mr. Pfeiffer and I could push this further in. You have elevated the conversation amongst us. I've learned a lot this evening, so we really appreciate your time. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you call the next item?
Our next item is SPLA 25-00036, a site plan amendment for site plan 66 to allow for temporary conversion of 125 residential units to hotel units for a period of 2 years located at 1901 North Moore Street. And we have Emma Martin, our principal planner, to present this item this evening.
Hello, thank you. Give me a second to pull up my presentation. You. Okay. Hi there, I'm Emma Martin with the Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development, and I will be presenting the 1901 North Moore Street Major Site Plan Amendment. I'm joined online virtually by AED's Jane Kim and DES's Rob Gibson. This item consists of a request to temporarily convert 125 residential units to hotel units for a period of up to 2 years. The site is subject to site plan number 66, which is approved for a 2-tower, 27-story residential building with ground floor retail. Adjacent properties include Gateway Park to the north, Roslyn Gateway mixed-use development to the west, the Waterview mixed-use development to the east, and Central Place to the south. Site Plan 66 was originally approved in 1968 for the Roslyn East office building, which has since been demolished. In 2021, a major site plan amendment was approved to redevelop the site with a 423-unit, 27-story residential building with ground floor retail, and there have been various minor site plan amendments over the years. The building is currently under construction. The parcels subject to this application are Zone CO Roslyn, and the applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing zoning or GLUP designation. The CO Roslyn zoning district corresponds with the High Office Apartment Hotel GLUP designation, and the site is located within the Roslyn Coordinated Redevelopment District. The applicant's proposing to convert 125 residential units to hotel on floors 5 and 7 through 17, mostly in the southern tower, as well as converting 77 parking spaces to hotel use for a temporary period of up to 2 years. The applicant initially requested the temporary conversion for a period of 5 years, but they amended their request to shorten the time period to 2 years after receiving feedback during the project's review. The top image on this slide is the approved 5th floor plan. The bottom shows the proposed. The beige color is residential and the pink would be temporary hotel units. They're proposing a partial conversion in the southern tower of this floor. There's no changes to the 6th floor, so this is the 7th, with the approved on top and proposed shown on the bottom. And this is the last floor plan I'll show you, level 8, where they're proposing a partial conversion. This is similar to floors 8 through 12, and then full conversions of the southern tower on floors 13 through 17. The temporary hotel use request is consistent with the Roslyn sector plan, which recognizes the importance of both residential and hotel uses in the Roslyn Coordinated Redevelopment District, or the RCRD. The proposal provides flexibility of use that's responsive to market opportunities while also establishing a very limited window of impact for concerns raised during the engagement process. Specifically, the proposal supports financial performance of multifamily buildings, which helps construct residential buildings and overall increases housing supply. It likely has a limited impact on overall housing supply, as these will be temporarily used as hotel during the initial lease-up period and then converted back to residential. It adds a unique hotel type of units, which can be added or removed quickly, and is finally a permitted use in the zoning district, is temporary in nature, and doesn't permanently alter the land use. Staff conducted community outreach at the beginning of the public review process to the following groups, including the North Roslyn Civic Association, Radnor Fort Myer Heights Civic Association, the Roslyn Bid, Waterview Condominiums, Lake Meridian Hotel, Central Place, and the Hilton Hotel. And on February 4th, 2026, we had a virtual public meeting and invited civic associations, surrounding residents, the bid, as well as liaisons from the Planning Commission, Housing Commission, Disability Advisory Committee, Transportation Commission, Economic Development Commission, to engage in a public discussion with the applicant and staff about the proposed site plan amendment. The applicant and staff provided an overview of the request, followed by questions from the public. Attendees asked questions about traffic and transportation, and expressed concern about temporary units taking away from the residential inventory, as well as a desire for a shorter period of time for the conversion, which at the time was requested for 5 years. And the community had voiced more of an appreciation for 3 years as opposed to 5. Staff had also created a web page that included links to the application materials and community meeting materials. So staff believes that the proposal generally complies with the adopted county plans and policies, can be achieved with no structural alterations or additions to the building or streetscape, and is not anticipated to create undue adverse impacts on the neighborhood, subject to compliance with the proposed conditions. Therefore, we recommend adoption of the ordinance to permit temporary conversion of 125 units for a period of up to 2 years. And that's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And now we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you very much, Chair Bagley and members of the commission. My name is Andrew Painter with the law firm of Walsh Colucci. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I am joined with representatives from Jefferson Apartment Group, Greg Van Wee to my right, also Jason Fuden and Mike Goodwin with Placemaker. And I appreciate Ms. Martin, her work on this and her summary. She is going to run the slide deck tonight because I keep getting booted off of Teams for some reason. What I'm going to do is sort of just provide an overview of the application. I'm going to turn it over to Greg Van Wee to discuss how we got to where we are. And then the time remaining, I'd like Jason to speak to his company and Placemaker and stuff. We can go to the next slide. This is an exciting use of the property in our estimation. If we can go back one slide, that proposes the temporary conversion of 125 units in an approved building that is on the property for a hotel use for up to 2 years. The approved building is under construction and JAG intends to begin leasing in the next few months. But as Ms. Martin mentioned, your staff report notes the proposed temporary hotel use will facilitate faster occupancy within the building. It will help activate what would otherwise be vacant units during the initial lease-up period. It will provide a creative way to partially recapture and realize the inventory of hotel units that we lost during the pandemic, and it will provide a compatible use that provides economic activity and help Roslyn's retail and restaurant spaces, including within this building. Next slide, please. She provided an orientation of where this is, but the site is shown in beige there. It was approved back in 2021 for a site plan, major site plan amendment for redevelopment. It is planned for high office apartment hotel on the GLUP. It is in the RCRD. And the sector plan, as your staff report notes, recommends modernizing Roslyn's hotel inventory, adding to it, and having continued development with it in the modernization of it. Next slide. So the 2021 site plan permits construction of a mixed-use building containing 422 residential units. It's 27 stories. It's a unique building. If you have been down to Roslyn recently, it is quite striking architecture. It has 2 towers. And the northern tower is in the foreground, closest to Gateway Park, but it's in the southern tower that the majority of the proposed changes would be located, sort of the darker building that's there. The building is supported by 283 parking spaces in a partially above grade and below grade garage, as well as about 11,000 square feet of ground floor retail space. Next slide. Here is a rendered site plan showing on page north, or the top of the page, that is the eastern sort of the side of the property. You can see North Lynn Street as you go into Georgetown. That is where the main lobby entrance is going to be, and where there would be short-term curbside utilization for pickups and drop-offs and just parking along North Lynn Street. Along North Moore Street on the western side of the building, that is where the loading is and all the vehicular entrances are for residences and visitors. We go to the next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Greg just to briefly talk about the construction status and where things stand. Greg?
Great. Thank you. As Andrew said, my name is Greg Van Wee. I'm a Senior Vice President with Jefferson Apartment Group here on behalf of ownership. As described, the building is substantially complete at this point with just interior unit finishes and other finishes remaining to be completed. We are awaiting permanent power from our friendly energy utility company and expect to receive that this summer and then start to deliver units and common areas this fall.
Right. Thank you. Next slide. So what is being proposed is a temporary conversion of 125 units on floors 5 and floors 7 through 17 in mostly of the southern tower to be used for hotel uses. We did initially file for a period of 5 years, but after meeting with members of the public as well as county board members and discussing with staff, we later reduced that to 2 years. It would be supported by 77 parking spaces. The parking ratio would remain a 0.611, which is identical to the residential parking ratio. There are no exterior or any major interior structural changes, no modifications to site circulation, GFA, layout, no external signage. The only signage would be inside the building or inside the garage. And so again, it's really just taking unleased, dark, vacant residential apartments during that initial lease-up period, which for a building of this size, over 400 units, can take a while. Next slide. So I'll let Jason speak a little bit to Placemaker, but I did just want to highlight a couple things here. One, Placemaker is a good local success story. As some of you all know, it started out as Y Hotel back in 2017, and the idea of a pop-up hotel or temporary conversion really was pioneered in this county. It has simply, since taken off nationwide. The company has successfully operated 3 interim pop-ups in the county, as well as partnership with Marymount University. For the other 3 pop-ups, they ultimately transitioned fully to residential use, and the company has grown into the largest independent hotel operator in the region. It has contributed over $1 million in transit occupancy taxes. It employs more than 24 people at every single one of their temporary interim uses for hotels. If we can go to the next slide. And I wanted to spend just a second to talk about the temporary hotel use. First, as staff mentioned, this really does help de-risk large-scale projects during that initial lease-up phase where there is uncertainty. It improves lender confidence. It helps unlock and catalyze additional housing development, especially for the larger at-scale projects for residential. As staff mentioned also, it's not permanent. This is only for a limited time. The experience that Placemaker has had is that the majority of these uses go away and convert back to their residential use within about a year to a year and a half, hence the reason why we've requested 2 years. Third, and something that is really appreciated by the people that live here, this offers the ability to combine apartment-style living and spaces, especially if you have suites or 2 bedrooms with a common living area in the middle, with hotel-style consistency. And frankly, for me and my family, I would love to stay in something like this because we have kids and we need more space. But in doing so, we do capture new visitors who might not otherwise stay in Arlington. It's especially true for families. It's especially true for relocations and corporate tenants. And it's also true with a lot of embassy work and other types of things downtown that want to be proximate to DC, but not in the district proper. And what we have found, or what Placemaker has found, is that a lot of people that come here, whether they're relocating from a different region or they are apartment users or people that are interested in locating in the apartment, this provides an opportunity for them to actually live on site. And then there is a significant number of people that eventually end up leasing and becoming permanent residents of the building. So there's a benefit for that as well. And lastly, on this slide, Arlington has approved this use in 9 other locations, 4 of which were Placemaker or Y Hotel locations. Next slide. One of the things that we found, and if you've done a temporary hotel conversion before, you know that there are a series of conditions. And up until this application, the conditions were not as robust as what you're seeing tonight. During our discussion with representatives of the community, and especially with certain members of the county board, we learned that there were some concerns about the fact that there really is no specific policy about temporary conversions. There are also concerns about compatibility with residential uses. And there's also concerns about the need to build community trust. And so we proposed a series of conditions after talking with those stakeholders, proposed them to staff. Meanwhile, staff was working on their own set of conditions. They merged them together, and what came out is what is in front of you this evening. Some of them are carried forward from prior hotel conversions, but a couple of things that I wanted to mention. First, in addition to the temporary hotel tracking report and the utilization report at the conclusion of the 2-year period, we are now obligated and have committed to more robust check-in procedures and distributing information about parking and standing and idling in travelways in front of the building, providing information about transit options, providing information about pedestrian connections, environmental sustainability, building efficiency, trash collection, and water usage. So that is mandatory now. Second, having an on-site 24/7 liaison that is responsible for hotel management and providing that contact information, not just to the county, but also to the BID, to the Civic Association, to adjacent property managers and owners in the vicinity of the property. Having a temporary hotel parking management plan, having a temporary management plan as well, and then having procedures for hotel operations, pickup, drop-off, and deliveries as well. So all of this, we thought we could use this as a way to address some of the concerns that we've heard, and it really has been educational. Within whatever allotted time I have, Madam Chair, I'd like Mr. Fuden to speak just a little bit, if that might be allowed.
30 seconds.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jason Fuden. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Placemaker, formerly Y Hotel, and we founded the business, as Andrew mentioned, here in Arlington. To keep it very brief, this is our home. This is where we came from. We're now national, as Andrew mentioned. Jurisdictions like Santa Clara have permanent policies to have pop-up hotels to increase their development of housing supply. We're super proud to have started in Arlington, and I'm happy to answer any questions about this pop-up or anything else. Thank you all.
Good job. Madam Clerk, do we have public speakers this evening?
We do not.
Wow. Okay. I think most of you have seen that we did receive some comments and things, so hopefully you've had a chance to review those. I was the Planning Commission's representative to the Lunch and Learn, and just as a reminder, this came up as a means of making sure that there was enough community outreach and input in both adapted reuse and major site plan amendments, and then also enabled having someone from the Planning Commission be able to then make a report, because we didn't have anybody who was reporting on these to us other than what we got from staff and an applicant. And I did float this as an option for our newer commissioners to shadow me, and Commissioner Amadeo did. So I wanted to just recognize that. You saw my report. If you didn't, I have copies that I can distribute. I brought a couple of hard copies. The biggest thing that we heard, I think, at the Lunch and Learn was one thing that's already been addressed, from 5 years to 2. Thank you. Also, transportation issues, which sounds like the county board was also spooled up on as well. And those include pickup and drop off, and primarily along Lynn Street. And let's see if there was anything else really that sticks out as other things. And just any impact that might be in the hotel industry. So I will leave it at that and open it up for questions. Commissioner Berkey. I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. Commissioner, we'll go with Commissioner Guevara, then Commissioner Berkey, then, and then Commissioner Peterson.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for a great presentation. I was reading through some of the emails that we received from community members. I know that, hotel inventory has been down since the pandemic, but so have visitors. I know Meridian was concerned about an increase in sort of competition on to their business model. I'm wondering, I know in the staff report you said you don't foresee that being too problematic, but do you also see that perhaps this is going to be more of a model that's going to be used by developers? And if so, I know it's been used essentially 9 times. I'm just curious on your thought of this, because I do think it's a good bridgeway, right, for occupancy, tax revenue increase. I'm a dog lover, so maybe you could use these for dogs, lodging, where some other hotels have restrictions. So just wanted to get your general thoughts on those questions.
My colleague Jane Kim from AED might have more information in terms of market trends in hotel stock. Jane has joined us online. And it looks like she's on screen.
Hi, Jane Kim from AED. I think the 125 units and the fact that it's a temporary use is kind of allays some of the concerns that the hotels may have. I understand that it is a soft market due to a lot of kind of outside forces in the region. But, as was stated in the staff report, and I believe mentioned by one of the commissioners previously, we've seen a pretty significant, removal of hotel units specifically in the Roslyn area. So we think that the 125 temporary units that this project brings obviously doesn't make up for that big loss, but also is kind of a minimal impact both towards the hotel supply as well as the temporary reduction of housing units.
Okay, great. That was sort of my inclination, but just wanted to clarify. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Berkey?
I'll yield my time to Commissioner Peterson, and then I'll go ahead.
I have a question similar to Commissioner Guevara's, which is just, I was looking at the Arlington Economic Development website and saw for the year 2025, the hotel occupancy rate for the whole county was about 70%. So I was also wondering about, since we still have a lot of vacancy in the hotels, does this potentially hurt the TOT? Well, I guess we're still going to get the TOT tax one way or the other. But I was wondering about the businesses that are already here and already contributing to the community. I was a little worried on their part. So do you know in Roslyn specifically, what is the hotel occupancy if the county overall is at 70% for 2025?
Jane, I see your, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's pretty similar within the submarket of Roslyn as it is overall within the county. I think that Placemarker is also providing a slightly different type of unit versus the traditional hotel. I know that the amenities and things like that are there, but as Mr. Painter mentioned, I mean, these are apartment style units. And so I think the increase in type of supply could even draw potentially other types of visitors to seek these types of units within the Roslyn neighborhood, which I think has more traditional units, hotel style units with the existing market. And yeah, we will be getting the TOT regardless. So that's there's no loss in the potential tax revenue there.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good distinction that it's a different type of hotel unit. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Berkey?
Thank you. So this is I believe for Ms. Martin. So don't worry, it's not going to be too bad. So the site conditions that the applicant is proposing here, those would be enforced through what, complaints to zoning enforcement, basically? It would be complaint driven.
So it would depend, I guess, on which condition you're talking about, but if there was a violation of a condition, then that, a formal violation would be issued through zoning, depending on the condition. But yes, zoning would enforce the conditions.
And that would typically be complaint driven, right?
Yes,
I'm seeing Mr.
depending,
Pfeiffer.
you know.
Nod his head. And I'm looking in here, it looks like there is a tracking report. And is that the on page 19 of the staff report? And is that the end of the, looks like it's the end, or is that every 3 months here? I'm looking here. Looks like once every 3 months. Okay. I guess what I'm getting at with my line of questioning here is, we've seen this before, and I think it's my duty as a planning commissioner to evaluate it with our policies and make sure it's and conforms with them. I don't love these personally. I do worry it's sort of some folks in the community might see that they're getting housing and that it's a different use that's being proposed. I understand that the reasons that are being articulated here, but it is a different use. And the folks who are staying in a hotel, it's just a different use than if it's residential. And so I would like to see I need to think about what this would look like, but I would like to see a little bit more oomph, a little bit more emphasis behind proactive reporting to ensure that these conditions are being met, because what is almost always the case is that is reactive, and it is incumbent upon like the residents and folks who live nearby to then file a complaint. And it's a whole thing. And while, the applicant has a right to develop, certainly folks also have a right to understand what the conditions will be and that they're followed, and not have to undertake like a ton of work to make sure that they're being followed. So I just wanted to put that on the table. That is not a reason that I would not support this, but it is a concern that I have about these projects these applications when they come through. Thanks.
I have a question first. During the community meeting, I believe it might have been Ditmar that said that when they did something similar, that they specifically, in an attempt not to compete with the hotels, did a minimum 3-day up to 30-day. Is this something that you're considering?
I don't think, Jason.
No. The way the model works is we lean into whatever length of stay naturally occurs. So in the summers, we end up with a lot of long stays, a lot of Capital One interns from Fairfax and from around the region. And then oftentimes in the spring and fall, we see shorter term stays with families on the weekends coming to go to Georgetown or the National Mall. So it's imperative that we have that flexibility throughout the period. But our average length of stay will be somewhere between 4 and 7 nights. But there'll be times where it's a night for a family that's got 3 kids, and there'll be time where it's 3 months for an intern that's here for the summer.
Thank you. Commissioner Steinberger.
Thank you. So I think, I had a comment, but I think also piggyback off of some of what we've heard from staff, and then I think that dovetails nicely with what Commissioner Bagley was asking with regards to the average length of stay. I think because this is a different unit type, it's also potentially more likely that you will see people who want that sort of longer stay. I personally know people who've used this sort of like they're renovating their house kind of thing, and they want to move into somewhere. And so I think that has been, a useful, maybe not the intended necessary market for this, but that's, people who stay for 6 weeks in that, sort of environment. Whereas someone who's, going out of town for a day or two may tend to veer more towards a more traditional hotel environment, anecdotally speaking. So the reason I initially raised my hand was to largely align myself with Commissioner Berkey's comments, because I think from where I sort of interpreted that he was going with some of his comments is that I think that it's reasonable for us as a county, because we get these sort of one-off requests every, I don't know, this is maybe the 3rd or 4th one at minimum that I feel like I've personally, been asked to vote on. And so clearly this is, an entire business has grown out of this, as we've discussed, here in Arlington. And I think that's great. I also think it's reasonable that we as a county create some guardrails and sort of say, this is what we expect to see with regards to, this sort of temporary use. If the request is going to, continue to come more often, and we're going to have the same kind of conversation every, 6 to 12 months or whatever, average it is that we have this conversation, I think having some expectations from county leadership on what the county wants to emphasize and what the county wants to do with regards to a policy in this area makes sense. this is not a policy-making body. We're the keepers of the comp plan. That's not our role here. So I'm going to vote in favor of this because I think I voted in favor of all the other ones. But I would like to put on notice the county that we should get some guidance on this, that this is a reasonable thing, that, clearly a business has been created. Developers have, figured out that this is a way to do ramp up. If we as a county want to sort of set expectations, whether it's that if developers want this as a benefit, they have to do something more to, encourage it, whether it's that we need standards on, these should all be dog friendly. I'm not saying they have to be. I'm just saying that, like, we need some standards on what this should be, and this is not the body that should be making that. We've got letters and feedback, with associated with this request related to, if there's a housing crisis in Arlington, well, essentially, how does this help the housing crisis? I don't think it does. I don't necessarily think that that's what we're being asked to vote on tonight, or that that's sort of the purpose of what is happening here. The project itself has already been approved. These units are going to come online as residential units soon, and then, ramp up over some period of time. I'm now hearing to be 2 years. I do anecdotally think 2 years is way more reasonable than 5, so thank you for making that change. But I think that if we're going to keep having those conversations, the county board needs to do us the service of saying, these are the priorities. This is what, we as a county want to encourage, or conversely discourage. So I will vote for this, but I guess I'm putting the board on notice that this is something that, from a policy perspective, it can't keep coming to Planning Commission for us to sort of make policy ad hoc. That's not reasonable or fair, honestly, to developers or, placemaker, or, the county at large. So thank you.
Well stated. Thank you. Any other, Commissioner Lantalmy?
I just want to associate myself with Commissioner Steinberger's comments there and remind us, this body, that we in fact did pass a resolution during one of these earlier ones for to ask that very thing of the county board, to give for the guidance and policy. So, we're already on record of wanting that, and I absolutely agree. To remind the board that we do want this guidance. I too will be voting in favor of this, and that's mainly because of the 2-year limit. That was an issue every time it's come up. We wanted to keep this to 2 years. And that's the only reason I'm comfortable with this. Going beyond that makes me very, very nervous, and I really don't want to do that. So anyway, again, I just wanted to yay for Commissioner Steinberger. Thank you.
Commissioner Amadeo?
I wonder if you can clarify the benefits that the residents, because I think they were mentioned at some point, like what, because it seems like if they're getting something nice out of it, they might look more favorably on this.
And I might ask Mr. Puden to mention this, but I will say in our discussions, especially with county board members, the resident benefits and the interaction between the residents, the tenants that are leasing in the building and the hotel manager, like that was a major thing. And so there's a series of things that don't show up in the conditions that placemaker does operationally as a matter of course. Jason.
Yeah, it's like one, we are pet friendly, just to put it out there. You can come with your dog.
Did you say you're dog friendly? I didn't hear that.
We are very dog friendly.
Nice plug. Yeah.
The very first time we had a placemaker, my dog stayed with us. Yeah, there's a bunch of opportunities for the residents to benefit. I'd say there's specific things that we do for residents, and then there's soft things. So the specific thing we do for residents is they get discounted stays in the building. A lot of folks, rent exactly what they need space-wise, a studio or a one. And so when their family comes, they can stay in the building at a major discount. We also offer a la carte cleaning. And so if residents want, they can just text our concierge and schedule cleaning of their apartment at no cost to them. So there's some real benefits in being in a hospitality-infused apartment building. And then the soft benefits, we also have a 24/7 on-site staff in addition to the 24/7 on-site staff that the residents will have. And that means we end up befriending a lot of the residents who come by for the free coffee or the snacks or a conversation, because we are hospitality-focused concierges and they're very chatty. And so it's just a great little add to the building. In Arlington, this would be our 4th pop-up. The longest ever went was 10.5 months. So JAG's in the business of making this multifamily. There's a question about that. We're here to be temporary.
Can I continue? Because I don't necessarily see it as a negative. I mean, I appreciate the concerns that are going around, and I think you need to address all of them. There's a lot of this kind of stuff happening in Europe too, which is very interesting to me because we have a lot of, in Europe, we have a lot of buildings that are not being used. And so I think having some kind of hybrid situation in general is not something that I disagree with, but I do wonder if there's a way to lean more towards the extended stay paradigm, so that what happens to that furniture after, like, is that, like, what, I'm very practical, like, what, how are you guys going to manage all of this?
Yeah, so we are generally extended stay. The length of stay is a lot longer than a traditional hotel. And we focus on embassies were mentioned. We do business with all the embassies in DC, World Bank. We do a lot of training stuff for the State Department, somewhere between 6 and 12 week stays. So there is a lot of long stay. We have two business models, actually. This is our pop-up model where we're that bridge when a new building forms. We also have permanently blended buildings. We have one in Arlington we do with Marymount as an educational institution, where we have Amazon's first Just Walk Out technology in a hotel was in Arlington. And so we do that too. But for our pop-ups, the furniture is all rented. It all goes away. We can furnish something like 20 units a week or something crazy. And so it comes and it goes. And we're here just to, bridge that time between delivery of the building and lease up.
Maybe there's a gift to the future resident.
The cleaning's pretty nice.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Sorry, logistical question. And I feel like I've asked this question before, but I'll simply acknowledge I don't remember what the answer was. And maybe it's changed over some number of years. So I presume that there's a lot of coordination, like if the building is leasing up faster than like the 2-year predicted or what have you, how does that work that like if a unit is like hoteled out, rented, hotel, what's the verbiage? Booked, hotel booked, then you, and then, someone wants to like buy, like lease that apartment, like how does that coordination work? Can someone just summarize that for me? Thank you.
We have an agreement with JAG where on very quick notice, we'll start handing units back. And so the longest one we had was at Ballston Quarter. We were there for 10.5 months, even though it was a 2-year approval. But at the Bartlett, it saw a really crazy lease up. We were there for like 6 months. And for Y Hotel Pentagon with OR Partners on Columbia Pike, COVID happened about 4 months in, and so we called it. But we can very quickly unwind the pop-ups. They're designed to be done like that.
Commissioner Torres.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this because it doesn't add up to me, and it's nothing personal. Just if the units are ready for occupancy, I'm not understanding why they can't just already be residential. And if there's not a good answer to that other than the fact that you can't sell them at the price you thought that they were going to be sold or rented, then I don't think that's really going to improve in 2 years because we're approving so many projects in this area that is going to saturate the market if it's already getting saturated. Which means that we might be in this place again in 2 years discussing the same thing. So I love the building. I love the design. You guys seem like really nice people, but I just don't see how if the argument was that there's not enough hotels, we need more hotels, then I could see that, but that's also not an argument. So
Any other comments, questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Peterson.
I just wanted to say quickly, I empathize a lot with how you're feeling, Commissioner Torres, and I also, amidst a housing crisis in this community, my first gut instinct is like, why would we do this? And then kind of talking to colleagues, talking to staff, there is the reality that it does take time to fill the units just logistically for like move-in days. And, there's 450 units here, I think. And so that just, if every person moved in once a day, that ends up taking time. And if the units are sitting empty, that doesn't benefit the community. Whereas if they have somebody renting them for a hotel use, then that benefits the community for the short term. But I agree that in a housing crisis, we really shouldn't have these unless we really need to. So if they came back in 2 years and said, we'd like an extension, we couldn't fill up, I'd say, well, then lower your rents. So I'm okay with a 2-year timeline, but I wouldn't extend beyond that.
Commissioner Amadeo.
Was it ever considered to have some units be for affordable housing?
We do, in fact, as part of the original approval, have on-site affordable units as part of the original site plan.
Right, but if the hotel is not renting, like, would you open it up to that? Tough, it's a tough question.
Unfortunately, that's inconsistent with the loan covenants and other financing investments that took place to get this project started and to the finish line. So,
Yeah, and I also made, just to pick up on something that Commissioner Peterson had mentioned too, and Greg, please correct me if I'm wrong, but typically a building, you're looking at maybe 20-ish units a month, 20 plus units a month that you're leasing just generally. And for a building of this size of 420 units, it's a year and a half to 2 years to lease up.
it is, and the logistical challenges associated with moving people in, even touring people through the building, and that leasing process is a governor of a kind on how many leases we can actually sign. In this case, also, we've experienced some significant delays associated with the original site work around the perimeter of the site, and then also now with our permanent power connection to Dominion's grid that will mean we're delivering essentially most of the building at one time, which only further exacerbates that sort of logjam of getting residents into the building. But I do want to emphasize, as the name of our firm implies, this will be an apartment building long term, and we very much want to occupy it with residents who are signing traditional long-term apartment leases.
Commissioner Berkey.
I'll keep this brief. I'm going to be supporting this proposal, not because it fits within a lot of the aspects of our different pieces of the comp plan. I have my concerns about, enforcement of the site conditions, but as a planning commissioner, it's my responsibility to make sure, and it's all of our responsibilities to make sure that the proposals that come before us are compliant. There's a lot of wiggle room there of the different aspects of our policies and our comp plan. So, absent that, I have no choice but to support this. This certainly fits within, our economic development priorities. I think we've talked about the timeframes. I think 2 years is reasonable. I think if it went beyond that, we certainly could raise concerns about, how it affects our housing priorities and our affordable housing master plan and things like that. But I just think it's important to remember that, we have to make sure that when we have these applications that we're tying it to, whether it fits within the comp plan. Thanks.
All right, seeing no other hands, I believe we are ready for a motion, and our Vice Chair Guevara is helping us out with that tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I move that the Planning Commission recommends to the County Board to adopt the attached ordinance for SPLA 250036 to permit temporary conversion of 125 residential units to hotel units within the RCA site plan development, site plan number 66, for a period of 2 years with modification to the hotel parking ratio subject to all previously approved conditions and new conditions number 63 through 69.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Streiner. Was that correct?
Yes.
Did you get that, Mr. Pfeiffer? Thank you.
Fastest hand in the West.
Any other comments? Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I'm fine.
All right. So we will go ahead and do the vote alphabetically. Commissioner Amadeo.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara. Aye. Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Torres. Commissioner Bagley, I'm an aye, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 ayes, 1 nay, correct? Thank you. All righty. I assume there are no other motions. this evening? Okay, great. I just want to again thank Ms. Martin, Ms. Kim, and Mr. Gibson for all of their work on this, as well as the applicant. And we wish you a lot of success there and hope that you will get it leased up quickly. Looking forward to having that nice thing done down in Roslyn there. So thank you so much. Madam Clerk, would you like to call the next item?
Item number 3 is SPLA 25-00028, an adaptive reuse site plan amendment to convert 2 office buildings to residential use with ground floor retail use, modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed adaptive reuse of the buildings located at 1800 and 1901 South Bell Street. We have Courtney Badger, our principal planner of PD, to present this item this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am going to start pulling up the presentation. Just give me 1 second. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I am Courtney Badger with CPHD's Planning Division. I'm here to present on the 1800-1901 South Bell Adaptive Reuse Project. The item before you tonight is an adaptive reuse site plan amendment to convert 2 office buildings in Crystal City to residential. The subject sites are located within site plan number 56 on the JK block in Crystal City. You can see the limits of site plan 56 outlined in white on this map, with the adaptive reuse buildings outlined in red. 1800 South Bell, also known as Mall 1, is in the northwest portion of the block, directly south of the Crystal City Metro Station. 1901, also known as the Mall 4 building, is mid-block on the southern half. Both sites are zoned CO Mixed Use District, which corresponds to the general land use plan designation of high office apartment hotel. There is an open space triangle on the southern portion of the block where the 1901 South Bell building is located. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing zoning or GLUP designations. The site is located within the Crystal City Sector Plan in the Central Business District. The Crystal City Sector Plan calls for the redevelopment of 1800 South Bell, and it calls for the removal of the 1901 South Bell building to expand Center Park. 1800 South Bell is identified as a redevelopment site in the sector plan, which allows for a 300-foot high building at this location with a base density of 4.8 FAR for residential. The sector plan also calls for active retail on 18th Street, which is on the northern side of the 1800 building. The sector plan also envisioned 1901 South Bell building going away to allow for the expansion of Center Park. And the sector plan identifies Center Park as the largest park in Crystal City with a target size of about 74,000 square feet. With the construction of the Grace and Riva residential buildings, which are on the eastern portion of the block, the county was able to acquire 45,000 square feet of a public park easement for what is the existing Center Park today. In addition to that, JBG contributed $300,000 towards a master planning effort that is still in our CIP to be done, and built the grand staircase that leads to the existing park area. To achieve the full sector plan vision of the park, the 1901 South Bell building would need to be demolished and that land or easement be conveyed to the county. JBD as adaptive reuse application consists of the conversion of both of these buildings from office to residential with ground floor retail. The 1800 South Bell was constructed in the late 1960s and is currently completely vacant. JBG is proposing to do minor changes to the exterior of the building to facilitate the conversion to 129 residential units with approximately 5,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor. The proposed parking ratio will be 0.2 spaces per unit with 7 residential visitor parking spaces. The 1901 South Bell building is also a late 1960s construction. This building is not quite fully vacant, but projected to be vacant within the next year. And JBG is proposing to convert this building to 186 residential units with approximately 4,600 square feet of ground floor retail, again with a 0.2 parking space ratio per unit and 10 residential visitor spaces. So combined, JBG is proposing to remove over 543,000 square feet of vacant office space from the market and convert it to 315 residential units and provide just under 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail on this block. These are both a part of an adaptive reuse application. This process was established as part of the adaptive reuse policy, which was adopted in response to the urgent challenges facing the county resulting from the declining commercial office sector and the presence of a large supply of obsolete office space. As outlined in the policy, chronically vacant office buildings put significant strain on communities, including negative impacts on local economic activity, neighboring property values, overall quality of place and public realm, and the county's fiscal health. Therefore, a core principle of the adaptive reuse policy is that repurposing obsolete office buildings is a public priority. While emphasizing the urgency of implementing a streamlined approach for the review of the adaptive reuse application, it also acknowledges a potential need for policy trade-offs between meeting current county standards and ultimate project viability. So the adaptive reuse process is aimed at reducing the amount of vacant office space in the county. Looking specifically at the vacant office space in Crystal City, as of Q3 of last year, the vacancy rate was 27.7%. The adaptive reuse that was approved last year at 2100 and 2200 Crystal Drive reduced that vacancy by 3.7 percentage points. If the buildings that we are discussing tonight are removed from the office market, it will reduce vacancy even further down to 20.5% vacancy rate. Staff conducted community outreach to the following groups, including Crystal City Civic Association, or Highland Civic Association, and the National Landing Business Improvement District. One of the goals of the adaptive reuse policy is to provide a more streamlined review process to be more responsive to the changing commercial market sector. Therefore, they don't undergo the typical major site plan SPRC review process, as they're focused on only the change within the existing building. However, given the trade-offs surrounding Center Park, staff did host an additional engagement opportunity at a lunch and learn event. And at that event, there was a lot of discussion about the trade-offs of this proposal, with some general support for additional housing, but also questions about open space in Crystal City and the implications of this on Center Park. Following that lunch and learn event, staff and the applicant agreed to pause the proposal to explore ways to achieve the full extent of Center Park. After some good faith negotiations with JBG, financially feasible acquisitions of 1901 South Bell were deemed not feasible at this time. The existing 45,000 square feet that is dedicated to Center Park will be going through a master planning effort. And we recognize that this conversion is about trade-offs. Weighing the trade-offs, staff feels that the increase in housing and activation on this block will be a net benefit to Crystal City by reducing the amount of aging vacant office space and increasing the amount of housing units to be delivered quicker than a traditional site plan project. So the subject adaptive reuse site plan amendment for both 1800 and 1901 buildings are generally consistent with the intent of the county's adaptive reuse policy, which recognizes the repurposing of obsolete office space as a public priority that may necessitate certain policy trade-offs in meeting current county standards. The proposed conversion from vacant office to residential and retail uses provides an opportunity to revitalize the Crystal Mall block with new housing and retail opportunities adjacent to the Crystal City Metro Station. And the removal of these buildings would yield notable reductions in Crystal City's office vacancy rate. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the adaptive reuse application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Badger. And now we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I believe my presentation is also being brought up by Ms. Badger. I want to thank Ms. Badger and staff on this application as well. I'm joined tonight by Dolores Navia with JBG Smith, as well as Matt Ginnivan and Carly Snyder with JBG Smith, and then our project architect team for both buildings, both ZGF Architects and BBB Architects. They're here in the room as well and can answer any questions. We are very excited. We can go to the next slide to present this before you this evening. It's an application that seeks to take a major step in realizing the County Board's 2024 adaptive reuse policy and breathe new life into two buildings that are almost 60 years old. They are obsolete commercial buildings. And this proposal would remove about 500,000 square feet of vacant or soon to be vacant office GFA from National Landing's office inventory, which today, as staff mentioned, experiences an approximately 27% vacancy rate, and convert that space into 315 residential units. One of the things that is somewhat unique about the proposal is the average residential unit sizes for both buildings would be approximately 1,100 square feet, with more than half of the mix skewed towards multiple bedroom units, 2 and 3 bedroom units, which, as you all know, is atypical for new construction. It's something that JBG believes is not only going to provide product differentiation that will broaden the type of housing that's offered in National Landing, but what we've been saying from the beginning, we believe it will allow growing families that are living in National Landing to stay connected to the neighborhood as it continues its evolution into a walkable mixed-use destination. If we can go to the next slide. Ms. Badger already sort of oriented you. I did want to flash this up on the screen because in so much as this is a tale of two buildings, it is also part of the fabric of a larger story about the evolution of National Landing. So you can see the two buildings that are the subject sites outlined in blue. You can see the 45,000 square foot Center Park area in green. And then you can see other projects that JBG Smith has either delivered or is in the process of delivering in the immediate vicinity of the property. Next slide. And Ms. Badger oriented you already to what the sector plan calls for and the adaptive reuse, et cetera. That's okay, we can go to the next slide. The proposal that's before you, in our estimation, continues to advance a more than 10-year revitalization story in National Landing, largely led by JBG Smith, where it's delivered about 1,600 new apartments with the Grace and the Riva and the Zoe and the Valen. It's brought in 55 new retailers, which triples the amount of retail that National Landing has. And then on top of that, there's been continued investment in open spaces, in particular, the water park, which is east of Crystal Drive. That was completed in October of 2023, but that really has emerged as the cultural hub of this district of National Landing. Not only does it have beverage and food kiosks and water features, but it has a performance stage and outdoor seating. Those are specific items that were long planned for Center Park, but they've been relocated or located in Water Park where they've been very successful. And as Ms. Badger mentioned too, with the Grace and Riva site plan, there was the monumental stairs and a slicing through of the 1901 office building to create porosity between Crystal Drive and Center Park, something that was never envisioned by the sector plan, but has been a phenomenal success. Next slide. And building on top of that, in terms of what is coming, Ms. Badger mentioned the 2100 and 2200 Crystal Drive project, which is in the upper left-hand side of the screen. That'll deliver an additional 195 apartments, as well as 344 hotel rooms. On the right-hand side of the screen, those two images, JBG is investing approximately $40 million in a 12,000 square foot state-of-the-art event space that will also have a culinary program as well. And then I think we're all awaiting with bated breath, the opening of the new Crystal City Metro Rail station, which is in the lower left-hand corner. But all of this builds upon JBG's more than $500 million investment in its office portfolio in Crystal City and is gradually turning National Landing into a very vibrant pedestrian-oriented destination. Next slide. And so for more than 3 years, JBG has pondered what to do with these two office buildings, trying to find the highest and best use. As Ms. Badger mentioned, these two buildings were constructed in the late 1960s. 1800 is 12 stories, 1901 is 11 stories. They're either vacant today, or in the case of 1901, is estimated to be vacant by the close of this year. Both buildings experience outmoded floor plates, constrained ceiling heights. There's no private office tenant space, and there's really very limited options, if any options at all, for large office conference space and meeting space. So as a result, both buildings are now deemed functionally obsolete, and the prospects for re-tenanting them with quality office tenants really are non-existent. We could go to the next slide. These are just images of the two buildings. If you've been down there, you're familiar with what the conditions are for the building itself. It's kind of a sort of a dead space when you're walking under there. There are arcades that are dark with no activity happening. Next slide. And the same thing is true around 1901. It's interesting. They are both of the same vintage, but they are different architecture. But they're both very elegant in their way, if I can say so. Next slide. So when you look to see what a a building should be or a particular property should be, the first thing that you should do is look at the comprehensive plan recommendations. As Ms. Badger said, this is subject to the Crystal City Sector Plan, which is a broad vision to be realized over a 40-year plan horizon to transform Crystal City, now National Landing, into a vibrant mixed-use destination. The 1800 office building is planned for redevelopment up to 300 feet in height with ground floor retail. The 1901 office building is recommended to redevelop entirely with open space. As Ms. Badger said, forming an approximately 27,000 square foot portion of the planned 72,400 square foot Center Park. Next slide. And so the sector plan calls for the county to construct Center Park, and it also envisioned the 1901 building remaining, which is shown here. And that building footprint really does separate Center Park from Crystal Drive. There was an implementation strategy in the back of the Crystal City Sector Plan, Implementation Action 29, that the county was supposed to identify a strategy for procuring the 1901 office building and delivering Center Park. There has been no forward progress on that. That really is to be determined. But if you look at what Center Park is supposed to be, it's supposed to be oriented towards South Bell and 20th Street South. It's supposed to be envisioned as a principal gathering space for concerts and festivals and other casual and social uses. On the right-hand side of the screen is how it has evolved. As Ms. Badger mentioned, JBG has committed $300,000 towards Center Park's planning, the master park planning process. JBG dedicated a 45,000 square foot public access easement along the existing mall portion for Center Park. And then with the Grace and the Riva site plan 421, we introduced the idea of tower separation to break up the 1901 building, provide a new 25,000 square foot public plaza, the grand or monumental stairs. And then a lot of the same ideas that went into Center Park have been captured in the water park, as I mentioned, including the performance space. We can go to the next slide. And so in 2024, as was mentioned, the county board adopted the adaptive reuse policy. And JBG began exploring the potential for a residential conversion of both of these buildings to a potentially beneficial use. And that policy really does broaden the potential list of uses to which obsolete office buildings could be put. And it makes removal of the office building or a vacant office building GFA a public priority. And to us, introducing residential uses would not only activate these buildings, but would accommodate new residences. We can go to the next slide. And so what is shown on the left-hand side of the screen is the 1800 South Bell Street post renovation. And on the right-hand side of the screen, the lower image shows the ground floor portion of the 1901 building. We can go to the next slide. Again, it would be 315 units. There is a focus on multi-bedroom units. Approximately 50+% will be 2- and 3-bedroom units. Interior and exterior renovations, including window replacement, the addition of operable windows, repainting, the architectural designation of residential entrances, and then adjacent landscape and streetscape improvements around both buildings. Next slide. When I went to planning school, I learned that planning is, at the end of the day, all about a balance. And I think here a balance has been struck. It's taken a long time to get here. We were originally supposed to be before you back in December of 2025. We deferred tonight's public hearing to allow a full exploration of the possibility of trying to work together to find a way to make Center Park occur. But at the end of the day, stepping back, this does conform to the general land use plan. It satisfies many of the recommendations of the Crystal City Sector Plan. It satisfies the adaptive reuse policy. It removes vacant office supply, and it introduces new housing supply. So with that, our entire team is here. We can answer any questions, but we appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
We do. We have 2 speakers this evening. John Musso is here in person and Tarsi Dunlop is online. So we'll take Mr. Musso first.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. John Musso, Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I wish to express our support for the adaptive reuse project before you, and we strongly urge you to please recommend its adoption. We believe that this very much advances the public priority, as noted, in advancing the adaptive reuse of obsolete office space, as well as helping realize the goals that we all share for Crystal City to be a vibrant community now and into the future. Regarding adaptive reuse, as noted, the county and the Chamber very much supported the county doing this, advancing a public priority for adaptive reuse by the adopting this adaptive reuse policy. We believe that transforming 2 obsolete, almost entirely vacant office buildings in a transit-rich environment like Crystal City would go a tremendous way, not only in terms of advancing the adaptive reuse goals and reducing the 27.7% vacancy rate in Crystal City, but also helping alleviate the shortage of housing of all sizes in our metro corridor. As noted, there's going to be a focus on larger family, larger bedroom units, which is definitely something that is very much in shortage here in Arlington. So this would go a long way in terms of helping alleviate that and advance the county's housing goals. Additionally, this helps advance the goals that we all share for Crystal City to be a more vibrant, mixed-use neighborhood with nighttime and daytime activities. And we believe this really goes a long way in terms of building on the tremendous progress that's already been done with the Crystal Drive projects, the Amazon HQ2, and so much else that's creating a tremendous, vibrant neighborhood in Crystal City. And this is going to build on that progress. So we very strongly urge you all to please recommend its adoption.
Our next speaker is Tarcy Dunlop.
Hi, yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am the president of the Crystal City Civic Association. CCCA is supportive of adaptive reuse efforts generally, especially given housing needs and vacancy challenges, but these projects should not be benefit-free. While forms of benefits may differ, the county should not abandon the CCSP's long-standing commitments, especially as Crystal City continues to grow rapidly in density, residence, and commercial activity. Despite this growth, the area remains underserved in cultural and civic amenities and public spaces in an increasingly densifying area. Specifically, approval of the 1901 South Bell proposal risks delaying the long-planned Center Park for decades. 1800 South Bell Street presents a critical opportunity to deliver on key CCSP priorities. A space for a library reactivation of the underground for a theater complex. We recognize the properties proposed to be converted represent significant value, added which the county can enable to agreeing with JBG's proposal. We urge the county to acknowledge that a percentage of the Crystal City TIF should be dedicated to partially compensate for the lack of public benefits due to less new development and more added built density with these new built density with these properties. The fact that these properties are contributing more post-conversion to the tax base and TIF in particular should be sufficient for considering committing a part of it towards the goals and deliverables of the CCC plan CC plan. This is a policy ask from the board, but also an ask for JBG to agree as a stakeholder to provide space and agree on the use of TIF money. In sum, we ask that when considering this adaptive reuse proposal, the county not sacrifice long-term community goals and needs for short-term development gains. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was actually the first, I believe, when we did the lunch and learn, or when we introduced the lunch and learn idea. So this was the first one that we did with the adaptive reuse. This was back in November. I was also the liaison or the representative for this. I sent out my report. Obviously, the Center Park expansion is not going to happen. That was probably what held us up so long. There were some other things mentioned, but I think as per our previous speaker, Ms. Dunlap, some of the concerns in the community were about benefits. So with that, if anyone has any, if they want to see my report, I brought copies if for some reason you didn't see it online. I don't think this has gone anyplace else because those commissions were allowed to be a part of the lunch and learn. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Johnson. I'm sorry, Commissioner Johnson.
No problem. Sometimes I forget my last name these days myself. One of the questions that I have is around what is the current occupancy rate of JB Smith's buildings in the surrounding area. I know that we have done a lot of building in Crystal City / National Landing. To add 2 more sites is a lot of more building and more apartments. And while apartments are wonderful, I just wonder where we are in that space. So if that could be answered first. And then the second question is really around the 2 and 3 bedrooms. I heard there's more about multiple multiple sizes in these units than some of our other spaces. Is there the thought around 4-bedroom units, particularly as we're talking about community benefits?
So for the 2-3-bedroom units, again, over 50% are going to be 2 and 3-bedroom units. There's no thought at this point in time for 4-bedroom units. And Ms. Navia can probably speak to JBG's office portfolio.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name's Dolores Navia, as Andrew mentioned. Commissioner Johnson, I think to answer your question in terms of the 4 residential towers that we've delivered in the last 2 years, the Grace and the Riva are currently in the high 80s in terms of occupancy. I believe it's 86%. And then the other 2 are currently going through lease up at around 50%.
The one other thing I will say, thank you so much for that information. Really appreciate it. The one other piece I would just share is that in looking at the exterior of the building and surrounding all of the lovely new buildings that JBG has put up, if I were to move into National Landing into such a building, I would feel some type of way. And I think that we have to take that into consideration for the rent that people will be paying to live in the properties that you were mentioning here today. The windows in and of itself look like 1955, and so we want to make sure that we're meeting the look of the community as well. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Amadeo?
So much to say, and I 100% associate myself with the speaker online and with Ms. and Commissioner Johnson. I think adaptive reuse is a wonderful concept. I do see a problem here with just a quick fix to something that's maybe that requires more studying and more understanding. There's something I actually studied the floor plans that you posted. I'm just wondering, before I get into, is that okay if I ask a very architectural question? The original building, the offices were lined up with the structural grid. None of the apartments do that. Is that on purpose?
Like to, Chris Sama with ZGF Architects can answer that.
Hi, I'm Chris Sama, ZGF Architects, Associate Principal. You're correct. The office buildings aren't originally designed to host residential units. So one of the reasons that we push for the larger units is to help mitigate those column grids, and they actually provide some layouts that are more gracious because we have to follow this more rigid grid.
But none of the walls, so those columns will be in the middle of the apartments.
Correct. Well,
She say no, you're saying yes.
some.
Go ahead.
Depending on the size of the unit, some will and some will not.
I just want you to know that your plans are showing every apartment with columns in the middle of the unit. So that, because I saw the before and after, I think aligning some of the walls with the columns might be better. I understand that you're trying to squeeze some up. I understand all of the complications. And this is why I think sometimes trying to push a square into a round hole can be a problem. And I think I'm having a hard time with the architecture in terms of the glazing, and also the way you guys are engaging the street level. You're not showing what the original street level looked like. It had Cinetic Theater on it. I really would like you to do a comparison between what Cinetic showed at street level and what the new retail is going to show once completed, because the public engagement with Cinetic was, larger. It was about the arts. And I know you mentioned a stage in the park, but I'm still wondering, you have all this new stuff happening on top, and it's not clear to me what's happening below. It's like the catacombs, you got these beautiful things sitting on top of an empty space. It's not clear to me what you're doing with the rest of it, the park. There's so many questions to ask, and I want to, allow everybody else to talk. But I do have a million questions for you.
One thing that I'd like to just clarify. One thing that I like to just clarify on the columns components, yes, there are columns throughout the units. One of the things that we worked really hard outside of the concept plans, which is what was submitted as part of the application, since then is actually laying out each of the units. And with that layout, we are wrapping around columns. We are hiding them in certain ways that allows us to not have and impede any of the flow within the units. And so while they're there from a structural perspective, you can't get away from columns, even in new buildings. They are going to be hidden as best as we can to ensure that they're either in a closet or on the side of the living room or potentially in the bathroom where it makes sense and not necessarily in the middle of the kitchen. We would never deliver a building like that.
And if I may, if I also may talk about the ground floor retail experience, we have retail in the 1800 building that's going to be on 18th Street South. And then we have retail that's going to be fronting on, or retail equivalents that'll be fronting along 20th Street South in the 1901 building. And so I don't know if either one of the architecture teams wants to talk about, or Dolores, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that you mentioned, Commissioner, is around the Cinetic Theater and that space. And I just want to kind of come back to the fact that this is really the revitalization, the 1800 office building. It has nothing to do with the Cinetic space. That is a completely different space in and of itself. And the retail is actually located on 18th and Bell Street. That is where our retail is. And so the activation will be alongside the building as well as on that corner. And we could talk about what we do later on as part of the sidewalk experience between the space of 1800 and the AC Hotel, but that is a different project. It is not the 1800 revitalization project that we're talking about.
Go ahead. I have something.
Okay, hold on. I think we had, okay. Commissioner Peterson, did you have a?
Oh, yes. Well, first, I just wanted to reiterate my general strong support for the adaptive reuse policy. I think it is really important for the 16 plus years that I've lived in Arlington. Commercial vacancy has been a growing crisis. And when I was on the Fiscal Affairs Commission, I know a lot of work was being done by Arlington Economic Development to address it. And then the pandemic hit and it just got so much worse. So this policy, I think, has made one of the largest impacts on addressing commercial vacancy than any other policy that I've seen Arlington pursue. The fact that we would be going from a 27% vacancy to 20% vacancy with this project and the other projects that have been approved for this area, I think is really phenomenal. And, the difficult tax year, the difficult budget season that we just had, part of the reason that we saw a tax rate increase was because of our struggling commercial market. So projects like this help us bring in some of the much needed tax revenue that we need. I think the benefits are that we are seeing more housing. I think we're going to activate the streetscape. I think we're going to see more support for the local retail. I think we're going to see the environmental benefits of reusing an existing building. All that said, it does worry me that we have important community benefits that are part of our sector plan that will not end up getting realized because of this policy. And that is a side effect. And we had to make, this policy does require us to make these difficult decisions. And I think it's incumbent upon us and the county to say, well, we aren't okay with losing some of these important benefits. And so what can the county do to address that? And so a lot of times we rely on the developers to provide the community benefits through development. And I think if we have a policy like adaptive reuse, then we need to accept that, we're going to get that extra commercial tax revenue. And so maybe we can use that or other county resources to help provide the promised community benefits to the county. So I have a motion to that effect that I will be suggesting later. So stay tuned.
Commissioner, Vice Chair Guevara, then Commissioner Torres, then Commissioner Steiner.
you know, when I first started, I really thought about what's really our role as a commission and what we can prescribe and what we can actually, we can effectuate change. And something I've learned is that change here happens at a glacial pace. However, I know that other commissioners helped lead the way. Commissioner Patel, Commissioner Peterson, Striner, obviously Madam Chair, about really pushing for multi-unit homes so that we did have a sort of a wide variety of access for different families. Additionally, I actually think it's positive that not everything is going to look like the brand new shiny things, because that will allow actually access for other communities, community members to live in Arlington. It'll be at a lower price point, and it'll have bigger units. So I think that's a really positive progression. The other thing I did want to mention, I do want to associate myself with Commissioner Peterson. I do think there's this policy is amazing for adaptive reviews. And I mean, it's been since 2024, right? We all worked on this. But there really is a genuine question about community benefits and how do we sort of make that delta. I know I saw the letters from the community members. Some of them wanted library, theater, open space. Of course, as a community, we would want this, but there's a trade-off, right? But I do think that the county board does need to issue more guidance so that we can sort of create a better balance between both having more housing, but also being responsive to our community needs.
Commissioner Torres.
I have a couple questions. Could you provide a breakdown of the square footage for each unit? If you have studios, what the square footage roughly is, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms?
Sure. I've got that. Yeah. So well, I'll just give you the broad one. So 1 bedrooms would be between the 2 buildings. 1 bedrooms would be between 735 and 974 square feet. The 2 bedrooms would be approximately 1,100 square feet. And the 3 bedrooms would be approximately 1,664 square feet. And that's between the 2 buildings, averaging them between the 2.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask this question is I want to associate myself with the comments of Commissioner Amadeo, because one of the benefits that a potential renter or buyer could have in adaptive reuse, which is not a new concept, right? We've seen this in New York where warehouses no longer are functional. So all of a sudden you get these beautiful loft spaces and people envision get, you know, the benefit of the high ceilings and columns and industrial look. But if we're seeing that the design is really just trying to fit in as many units as possible without really taking into account the grid of the existing building, where potentially it could be a benefit, right? Making sure we align the walls with the columns, and then therefore you would have bigger spaces. For example, I have a 1-bedroom unit that was designed in 1980. And a 1-bedroom unit, the spacious because it's 1,000 square feet. Now, you're designing units that are 700. That's like another bedroom, really. So that's where the design really plays into effect and why it is important. If we already are allowing people to build without providing county or community benefits, then at least maybe the people that are going to live in these spaces should have some of those benefits by having more space, by utilizing the grid that already exists, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Striner.
Commissioner Peterson and Guevara took the words right out of my mouth, so I just associate with them.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yes, and I'd also like to associate myself with Commissioner Peterson's comments, and I will probably be voting for her motion when she raises that. Clearly, we all mourn the loss of that possible park there, but it's possible that park would not have occurred anyway. We have a building that's empty that wasn't going anywhere. There's no way, since the county declined to buy that property, that means it's going to be sitting there. It's not going to get torn down. It's going to be sitting there. So given that the county did not step up for that building, I do think the county does have an obligation to try to find other ways to contribute community benefits in lieu of this building going down. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments or questions, I believe we are ready for a motion, and Vice Chair Guevara will be helping us out with that. Thank you.
Sure. I move the Planning Commission recommend to the county board to adopt the attached ordinance for SPLA 25-00028 to permit the conversion of 2 existing office buildings to residential use with ground floor retail with modifications for reductions of residential and retail parking ratios, density exclusion, and other modifications necessary to achieve the proposed adaptive reuse located at 1800 and 1901 South Bell Street, Mall 1 and Mall 4, subject to all previously approved conditions, SP number 56, and the conditions of the attached adaptive reuse site plan amendment ordinance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Patel. Thank you. All right. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I think we're good.
No pressure there. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and vote, and we will do this alphabetically. Commissioner Amadeo.
Nay.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Rivera. Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Striner.
Aye.
Commissioner Torres.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley is aye, so we have 11 yeses and 1 no, and thank you. Now, I understand that Commissioner Peterson, you have a motion.
Yes, I emailed this around to everyone earlier today, so I hope you all had a chance to look.
Excuse me 1 second. Madam Clerk, could you put that up on the, thank you.
Okay, so I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the county board to identify plan goals that will not be realized due to the county's adaptive reuse policy for 1800 and 1901 South Bell Street site and further adaptive reuse sites, and prioritize county resources to support these plan goals.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Striner.
And thank you for Commissioner Striner for your wordsmithing assistance earlier this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, so I alluded to it already, but I think this addresses one of the unintended side effects of the county's adaptive reuse plan, that goals, sometimes important goals, sometimes can't be realized because of the policy. And while I don't necessarily think that we need to change the policy itself, but I do think we, as a community, do want to make sure that we are fulfilling promises to the community, making sure that our plan goals to provide parks or libraries or theater spaces or cultural spaces or affordable housing do get addressed. So since the county will be benefiting from additional taxpayers and commercial tax revenue through the adaptive reuse policy, we can step in and provide some of these planned for benefits through a different mechanism. So the county resources could be in the form of operating budget, CIP, land, et cetera, depending on what the missed planned goal is.
Commissioner Patel and then Commissioner Amadeo.
Commissioner Peterson, I'm supportive of your motion. I just have a question in terms of what that means then on the Saturday vote. Are you asking them to specify on the record specifically which goals are not going to be realized for this particular property? Or are you asking for a general
awareness that we are missing out on policy goals? And so when we are reviewing the CIP, we can consider that. Staff has already talked about ways that they are going to mitigate the Central Park being a missed opportunity. So the county can look at ways that the CIP or operating budget can otherwise support some of those missed opportunities.
I'm wondering if it needs to actually be clearly stated rather than generalized principles, because I worry that then what we're going to get is we didn't get all of our affordable housing, we didn't get all of our public space, rather than very clearly articulating the very things that we did not get. And I think that this is, you know, unlike some of the, it is the intention of the planning commission spaces. I want the county board members to go on record as recognizing the very things that we are trading off on here for the public to better understand and realize.
Right.
So if we could wordsmith this a little bit to say, and I'm sorry that I didn't do this beforehand. I will note that I was late for the record. So I think that it needs to be to specifically identify on the record, or maybe it needs to be specifically identified at the time of the vote, of the county board's vote. Planning Commission recommend to the county board to specifically identify plan goals that will not be realized for, yeah, I mean, I think that that's enough. And then they will know that it needs to be, once you add the word like specifically, I think that they will know that it's not a generalized proposition.
Okay, so
At the time of approval, because it wouldn't be necessary if they did not approve the plan, if they did not approve this
so your
project.
friendly amendment to the motion on the table
Yes.
is to add the word specific.
To add the word, to recommend to the county board that at the time of approving this project, that they specifically identify plan goals that will not be realized.
Yes, oh, sorry.
I'll take you in a second, Commissioner Amadeo. Go ahead, and Commissioner Steinberger.
Oh, wait, did Robertson have, he was supposed to be after me. No? Okay, you took it down. Were you in agreement with me? Thank you.
So
I have this, it's not updating live. I was gonna, is there a way to refresh it or? Okay.
um,
Go ahead, Commissioner Steinberger.
so I guess that is this motion only effective if we pass the motion to allow the adaptive reuse tonight? So, or does this motion need to convey some sentiment of whether or not the adaptive reuse proposal passes? Because I would suggest that it needs to go both directions. That if whether or not it passes or doesn't, there's going to be trade-offs here. We're either not going to get units on the market or we're not going to get open space. So I want it to be clear that the county board has to, if they're going to be specific about what's not happening, they need to be specific in both directions.
It's for me.
Go ahead.
No,
but I wouldn't typically disagree with that notion if this were a situation that it wasn't very clear that what we get out of it is additional housing, which is why we did adaptive reuse. It's a primary goal of adaptive reuse. The issue I think here is, and what we're hearing from the community over and over again, is we are missing out on some very important community benefits when we are doing these policies. So it's not that we don't know that the goal is to increase housing. That we all know. The issue is, what are we losing in the process? And I think that is what the county board needs to go on record and say. At this particular site, we are losing A, B, C, D, E, and F. However, the policy is to increase housing.
I would say that we need to be clear on how many housing units we are not getting if this doesn't pass. So I stand by my statement, but I appreciate the clarification, but I think it goes both ways in my view.
Well, we've already approved it, so we aren't.
If the board, sorry, I'm saying if the board approves it or not, because they don't have to take our recommendation. They might not. They probably will, but they don't have to.
But if they don't, then there's not, I mean, the plan itself says how many housing units are coming online. It
Yeah, but
says,
if we're asking them to itemize what they're not going to get in a plan, if they do pass this proposal and we're not going to get this open space, we're not going to get this, we're not going to get this activation, then I think they should also say, okay, we denied this motion, therefore X number of units are not coming online.
So
I view it as they need to be specific either way. I appreciate the distinction. I think for me, I feel like it would need to go both ways. That's just how I feel.
Can we just look at what Madam Clerk has been kind enough to put on the screen as an amended, based on our,
Yeah,
is this,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Steinberger, is this something that you think?
I would say at time of project approval or rejection.
So I would not be in agreement with that. I just want to let you know, because the whole point of this is to alleviate the community concern around what goals are not being achieved. If you say that it's at the time of project approval, right? The only issue is the goals. If it's decline, if they're going to deny it, they're denying it, and we're losing the housing in the process. We already know that that's happening.
Commissioner Strider.
Yeah, so the way that I see this motion moving, it seems to me a little redundant, because this sort of weighing of the pros and cons of each option seems like something the board would do anyway, just in the course of their discussion. How I was seeing this originally was that this was an opportunity for the board to direct staff to identify specific things like the park here and other future site plans, because there are only a handful of these in the county, and find specific areas that they know that by choosing to go the adaptive reuse route, they're not going to be able to deliver on X things, and work the execution of X things into the CIP and the operating budget. Like I envision this as more of like a longer term thing, rather than just getting them on the record for a particular vote. And I think that, and again, Commissioner Patel, I saw you shaking your head no, but I feel like this is something that would kind of just be I don't know with what I was saying initially, but I feel like these, yeah. And anyway, that I feel like this sort of, if we do this, we're not going to get that, is going to come up naturally, and I don't think we need to weigh in on that. Okay, why are you shaking your head?
I disagree. I think the problem is that they do not say very clearly on the record what the trade-offs are on a particular project. I think that is where the community is coming up and saying, this is not okay. And then we're not able to really take account for what it is that we've lost or we haven't lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this particular motion is a kind of essentially like a best practices motion that says, we want you to do this in these spaces, and probably we want you to do this in more spaces than just this, where you are being very transparent with the community around what the trade-offs are on a particular project. Now, if it was not an adaptive reuse project, I would be more inclined to agree with what Commissioner Steinberger is saying, because there would be more things on the table.
Right.
But that's not what's on the table here. And I think you have to be like, it's like a situational awareness on this adaptive reuse notion. And so I think the county board has to come out on the record and say, this is what we're trading off when we're doing it. And that's not to say that it's wrong, right? But there needs to be an acknowledgement that they acknowledge that this is happening for the community, right? And I think that goes a long way in the community then understanding, recognizing, and feeling a little bit more comfortable with it, particularly as other projects come down the pike. The other thing that I was shaking my head about was because this particular motion doesn't go to a generalized statement. It is specifically, it addresses those two projects.
Future adaptive reuse sites.
Right, but this particular site, I mean, and like to your point, right? Like how many are we talking about? Where are we talking about? Like that's I think just this is a best practices kind of motion that starts to build that muscle for our county board, saying this is a transparency issue.
Yeah, but is there a way that we can do both, like in a motion like this, or we get them to say?
Let me ask in the to try to bring us back to focus here. What about this would you not be able to support in terms of what you were willing to support before it was amended?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would still support it. I just think it has to be sort of a clearer distinction that we're not just telling the board to say, we're getting this and we're giving up that, but that we also want the board to look forward and say, for these handful of projects, staff should identify areas where we're going to have potential shortcomings. And so I think that it would just have to be sort of separated. I would still support it as is, but I think, let me think on how I would phrase it. To direct,
Or maybe for the 1800, 1901, and well, it says in future adaptive reuse sites, it does speak also to the future.
What
right,
if this is two motions?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think
We'll
that's
do a
right.
second
I
motion.
understood it to be a broader motion as well when Commissioner Peterson routed it this morning, last night, some point in time.
Right.
And so that was just sort of how I understood it to be, that we were using 1800 and 1901 South Bell Street as an example of what we expect from the county board, and not simply because I agree with Commissioner Streiner. I think that's the course of the conversation. That's probably the entire conversation that the board's going to have on this project is what are the trade-offs? What are we getting and not getting? So I don't want this to get lost in the sort of like what would be sufficient to meet the kind of like specifically identify? Is that like a memo? Is that like a slide? I don't know what we want the county board to sort of release with that. Just sort of like, did you have something in mind? Like from
I just think they need to say it from the dais. We're not getting X, Y, and Z, and then it gets captured on the record and we go from there. I don't have my mic on, so, I do have my mic on. I mean, I just think it's something as simple as it going from the dais, because the same thing that happens here when we have our minutes, it's the same, we are captured forevermore. And so somebody would capture that forevermore for the county board as well. It just would be part of the record.
Well, and I think at this point that the county board is going to be well aware of this discussion, but having said that, Commissioner Torres, you have something to add?
Yeah, so one thing that could be added is also maybe starting to compile a database of these particular projects and what is missing, so that at some point we realize, okay, are we approving too many of these without the benefits that we're used to? Like how much, where's the breaking point, I guess? I saw it more of as just compiling data for now, and then later on seeing what we do with that data.
If Commissioner Peterson.
So my understanding from when we approved the policy in, a year and a half ago, is that there are only a handful, like maybe 10 buildings in the county that are eligible for adaptive reuse just based on the way they're shaped. Like they can't, so certain buildings can or can't, or are more suitable for being residential. And so I don't think we're going to have a lot more projects that would qualify. I actually did reach out to staff at Economic Development to ask, how many more projects do you consider eligible and where are those projects located? Because if they're all concentrated in one neighborhood, then that neighborhood is disproportionately impacted by the potential to lose sector plan goals. Or if they're spread out through the entire community, maybe that's less of an urgent issue. But so at this point, I just want to kind of have us publicly acknowledge that we know the adaptive reuse site plan, the adaptive reuse process does cause us to potentially lose goals that are, identified goals in the sector plans or area plans. And we acknowledge that, and we think that the policy is important, and yet we do still think these goals should be acknowledged and pursued. And so the county just needs to make up for that. And so that's what we are recommending that the county board do. Figure out what those important goals are and proceed with addressing county resources that could provide those goals to the community. No, they're on vacation this week, so they are going to provide that answer to me before the county board meeting, and I'm the one presenting to the county board, so I can include that information to the board just as an FYI, but address that we didn't have the information to make a vote at this meeting. Yeah. Vacations.
Commissioner Streiner.
I've cooked something up here and I'm going to send it to you two. Let me know how this sounds. So that this would be a separate motion from the idea that Commissioner Patel is talking about, like that's localized to this particular item. And this is more broad in the way for future site plans, future adaptive reuse plans. So it would read that I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board direct staff to identify relevant sector plan goals that will be delayed as an unintended consequence of the adaptive reuse policy, and to increase the county resource allocation for these initiatives to support the identified goals.
I don't
Yes.
see how that's different from mine.
Yeah, well, the idea is that it would just kind of bisect to the bottom half of your motion and make it a separate one. It's not fundamentally different. I was running on the idea that we'd make two motions, and so I just took the bottom half. Yeah. Not particularly. Sure, I'll go slow. So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board direct staff to identify relevant sector plan goals that will be delayed as an unintended consequence of the adaptive reuse policy, and to increase the county resource allocation for these initiatives to support the identified goals.
So
That's the same as mine.
Wait a minute now.
We put more money into the initiatives that we're not going to get because of the adaptive reuse programs.
I don't think we can say unattended.
Yeah.
Because it's intended.
Okay.
We're just using it in a different framework, but it's an intended situation.
I have a suggestion, just in the interest of time, and since we seem to be a little messed up here. Why don't we go ahead and vote on, first of all, I believe procedurally we have to say that we are amending or friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
That friendly thing to get it to this, correct? Is that correct? So no further discussion on that. Let's have a vote on that. And then if you want Commissioner Streiner to float yours, we'll do that. How's that sound? Great, everybody, let's go. Okay.
Yeah, Streiner.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and vote on the motion as it reads here now. Okay. So Commissioner Amadeo.
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara. Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lintelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Abstain.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Torres.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley, I am also an aye. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have, 10, and then 2 abstains. Correct? Thank you. All righty. So now, Commissioner Streiner, would you like to make your motion, and then we'll see if it is seconded? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll read it a third time here. Third time's the charm. And I'll get rid of, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
I'm going to take out unintended as a consequence because I think that's right. Okay. Sure.
do actually have a question. Do we need?
Okay, excuse me.
Hold on.
You all need to have your microphones on, please.
Yes, hold on just one moment, please.
Commissioner Guevara, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, so my question or my suggestion was, instead of just saying delayed, perhaps we could include may not come to fruition, because
Okay.
some of them might not just be delayed.
I just have a procedural question, which I feel like this motion is separate and apart from the actual main motion. And so I'm wondering, Chair Bagley,
Yes.
if we might just do the main motion to allow these kind people to leave while we probably will sit here for another 15 minutes trying to wordsmith this motion.
I believe the main motion already passed, so it's already done.
You can, please, go ahead.
Because they're programmed like we are. So I mean, hey, there you go. So let's kind of wrap this up. Commissioner Streiner, would you like to do the motion? We can move ahead. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Are there any other text amendments to it really quick I can work in before? Okay.
You can yell at me about that one because I didn't have my mic on. I don't like that fiscal policy stuff because I'm not sure that there is any indication that it is going to happen later, which is why I think that Commissioner Peterson might have made her motion in the first instance around identifying which goals have not been achieved. Therefore, when we're doing the CIP review, we have the conversation of what didn't happen.
All right. Go ahead, Commissioner Streiner.
I just didn't understand the financial thing you said.
Okay.
It seemed like talking in circles. I just didn't
Sure.
understand it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that because we're not going to be doing these specific initiatives through these projects, and we're not getting that revenue through these sector plans, we would be shifting that burden into existing resources to pay for what these like the parks, things like that. We would just be using what we have already and not using projects from these new developments to pay for these initiatives, if that makes sense. Just replacing it as a revenue source.
In a minute. Sorry. So can you take a look at the screen and see if this is accurate and if we need to amend this before you actually make the motion?
Yeah, there's a few language changes in that, but generally that's accurate.
Okay.
Okay, let me.
Think we're removing unintended.
Yes, and yes, I have both of those in. Yeah.
I don't think that we have the authority to ask the county to increase county resource I don't think that we have the authority to do something that has a fiscal impact like that. Am I wrong?
No, I had concerns about that too.
I don't think that
Okay.
yeah.
That's good to know. I just work in budgets, so that's where my mind goes. Okay.
Well, I also don't know, is that like resource allocation to buy these buildings? I didn't understand.
No. I mean, like county money to like CIP investments to achieve.
Okay.
To consider increasing,
Considered increasing.
not
I
direct.
thought we were buying
considering.
buildings.
In the interest of time, and the applicant is sitting there with 10-year-old twins at home going like, what's going on here? Can we kind of come to I mean, we can always vote it down or whatever, but did you want to go ahead and make the motion as you feel it needs to be?
Well, so I'm wondering, how is this different than mine? It's
Just-
directing staff instead of directing the county board, because I think this is what mine said, except that you're telling staff to do the.
Yeah. And my idea is that this would happen, we would kind of front run this rather than it just sort of be the county board doing it, so that for these remaining site adaptive reuse projects, we're having staff consider it before it comes to the board. So there are ways to address it ahead of time.
And can I just ask, Mr. Pfeiffer, you're documenting this so that, and I do know that the board is very sensitive to our comments, especially when we arrive at stops like this where we're having a hard time navigating. Correct.
We'll make sure it ends up in the letter, yes.
Thank you. I knew that would happen. Okay, so Commissioner Streiner, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'll amend it, or I'll move it as I kind of have it amended. If it gets shot down, at least the comments are through. So I'm comfortable with whatever outcome comes from this. So anyway, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board direct staff to identify relevant sector plan goals that may not come to fruition as a consequence of the adaptive reuse policy, and to consider increasing the county's budgetary resource allocation for these initiatives.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Torres, excellent. Given that everybody's had ample opportunity to, I think, digest this, we're just going to move to the vote alphabetically. Commissioner Amadeo.
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Berkey.
Nay.
Commissioner Garcia, she's not here. Commissioner Govar. Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
Nay.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Nay.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Nay.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Abstain?
Abstain, okay. I hope you guys at home see how hard we take your comments to heart. Okay, Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Torres.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Bagley. Oh, God. I'm going to go aye here. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ayes, 4 nays, and 2 abstains, correct? Excellent. And I believe we are done with this item. So I do want to thank Ms. Badger and staff for this. I know that this was a long time in coming, and I really applaud the county's effort to try to buy that building, and the demolition costs and everything were just, it's unfortunate because we would love to see the park there. So I want to congratulate the applicant too for good faith negotiations on that. And we look forward to seeing this project come to fruition and appreciate all of your effort and the delay that we had to get here tonight and for your patience this evening and for our speakers who joined us as well. So thank you all very much. And for the rest of us, we have just a little bit of PC business and then we'll be out of here. All righty. A couple of things. So we have minutes to approve for both the April 6th and April 7th meetings. Can I ask for unanimous consent for both dates or do I have to do individual? Both. Okay, I ask for your unanimous consent. Great, thanks. Got it. Any staff updates, Mr. Pfeiffer?
No updates this month. Thank you.
Thank you. LRPC.
So we had a really great meeting on April 29th where we got an update on the special GLUP study report. There are going to be some administrative changes. You can read the report on the LRPC page. There's now going to be a tier 1-2 hybrid option. There will be an appeals process. There will be some streamlined study documents, and there will be an opportunity for applicants to start the SPRC process if they want to take that risk kind of towards the end of the special GLUP process. And so we'll see how that goes. We also met to discuss the climate action plan, which is kicking off now. The staff is aiming to have that done winter 2027, 2028. They asked us lots of questions about the vision and themes. Please have a look at the slides and the recording, and you can send in your own questions or comments. And we also, we submitted our 1401 Langston Special GLUP study report recommending that a full tier 2 study be done. So that will be coming in the next few months. And then our next meeting is on May 13th, where Commissioner Steinberger and I will be leading a comp plan update, looking at the draft guiding principles and the intro chapter outline.
Thank you. SPRC, number one, I didn't submit a chair's report this month because there have been no changes since the last time that I sent something out. We do have one roster to approve. Can I ask unanimous consent for the Virginia Hospital Center, Carlin Springs? Yes, great, perfect. And I want to thank again Commissioner Patel. That's a big project, a long-term thing, and thank you for chairing that. Zoko, don't think there's anything, correct?
Nope, not this month.
Great. Form-based code?
All's quiet on the Pike front.
Great. And PFRC, there's nothing coming up. I did advance some calendar dates. I won't go through those tonight because you can read them. I did want to do a follow-up. Commissioner Lantelmi, I want to say maybe 2 meetings ago, you brought up, please do not schedule SPRCs at the same time that Transportation Commission is done. I just wanted to follow up with that. That was the one and only time it's been done. It was done in concert with the applicant and also the project chair. Transportation was not discussed that night, just so you know. Just as a FYI and something to be thinking about, next year we lose 4 commissioners rolling off. We have Commissioners Patel and Steinberger rolling off in January. We have Commissioner Peterson and me in July, and Commissioner Berkey has indicated that he will not be re-upping his. So I am in the process of looking around for other, I talked to somebody this morning who is interested. I will be interviewing somebody next week. So if you want to be involved in that process at all, or if you know other people, please let me know. Also, congratulations to staff, because when we did go to the county board budget meeting and requested that minimally, if they could just save the 1 FTE from being eliminated in their department and could it be frozen, that was accepted. So it will be frozen. So even though there's a cost to that, it's much less, and they don't have to go through that extreme process to try to get that later. We will, June PC meetings, we are tentatively June 1st and June 3rd, EV charging the election with Commissioners Rivera and Robertson, HELRB, Nellie Custis Elementary School Local Historic Designation, Commissioner Steinberger. And if we're lucky enough, David Howell, Forestry and Natural Resources Commission, will be here to talk about biophilia, some of the updates in that. We all talk about it. Some of the newer commissioners have not heard that presentation. I heard an updated one a couple months ago, and we will be able to fit that in as an informational item like we had this evening. I think those are kind of important. And thank you to Commissioner Peterson for representing us at the May 16th board meeting. And last but not least, and I'll send out a report about this, last week I had an opportunity to meet with similar people as chair of our planning commission with Falls Church City, Fairfax County, Montgomery County, and Fairfax City. Some interesting comments there. So once I get their report back, I will send that out, and you guys can certainly take a look at that. Any questions, anything else? Boy, we did good tonight. So thank you all so much for being here this evening, and we are now adjourned.